the police forces, especially sheriffs, it seems like have a duty to, for instance, nullify unconstitutional edicts and things like that.
Well, the sheriff is the top dog, so to speak, in the county.
Is he? Because apparently he's not. They're freaking out. We got this rise of constitutional sheriffs across the country, and they're freaking out.
Well, they're actually assuming their responsibility. Most people don't realize that the sheriff, in some counties, it's the coroner, but those are very, very few.
In some counties, the sheriff is the coroner.
Well, that could be, but at any rate,
does that sound right, Matt? Because I've met a couple of sheriffs. They were also the coroner. I was like, oh, I didn't know you did that.
No,
or the undersheriff. It's the undersheriff or the sheriff. They're the coroner.
I've never run into that, but at any rate, under our system of government, with the powers that are supposed to be local. The sheriff is the man who is the top law enforcement officer, and he can nullify an awful lot. He can tell the federal government to go take a leap if they come in unconstitutionally to do something. And by that, I mean, the FBI, any number of law enforcement organizations from the federal government have been prevented from doing certain things because of these constitutionally minded sheriffs.
Yeah, that movement seems to be growing. Of course, I think we all know Sheriff Mack. He gets a lot of crap from the media. I met him. Very nice guy, by the way.
What's going on is these sheriffs that are growing because they're learning what the law really states. The primary law, the Constitution, the state constitution, the county charter, that sort of thing. And they know that law instead of all these regulations on regulations on regulations.
Yeah.
Which are a lot of them in complete violation of that basic law.
Yeah. I want to tell a story and then segue into the last section, and which is what action you guys recommend. So when I was living out, before moving to Wisconsin, I was during COVID. When COVID started, I was living out in the county in Montana, and they had all the craziness with the masks that they had everywhere else. And, you had the mask Nazis, and then you had the health department trying to implement and enforce their edicts and whatnot. But the county sheriff, thanks to citizens a lot of them who actually, some of them who were Birchers or at least supporters, they met with the county sheriff and they said, look, you not only do not have to enforce these edicts, which are not laws, but you're actually required to protect us from those. And that my county sheriff was one of, I believe, 55 or 54 in that state that signed onto a press release saying, basically, we're not the mass police. Furthermore, we have a lot of important things to do as deputies and even as the police officers. There's actual crime, we have to check that out. And so there was no teeth behind those edicts. And, I walked around, I went to the grocery store without mask, and one of the bars never closed, even though they got a lot of crap from the local paper, and the health department kept, whatever. Nothing ever happened to them. And I think part of that was there was no force. There was no teeth, because the sheriff already said, it's that's not what we're here to do. Is that the power of an informed law enforcement?
Absolutely. And the thing about trying to force the police or the sheriff or anything else to enforce these edicts, which a lot of people know are simply edicts, not law.
Yeah.
It creates a gulf between the population and law enforcement. How dare you tell me to do this when you should know what the law is, and I know what the law is.
Yeah. And the sheriffs need to step in. The sheriffs and the police departments, they need to step in and make sure our constituency. That's part. It's not just protecting them from someone coming at them with a baton or kicking them or whatever. It's it's bigger than that, right, Matt?
Yeah, and I think this was one of those few times in history where it really came down to there was a lot of political activity that influenced some of those sheriffs. I think a lot of them were thinking re-election and what are some of these citizens thinking about, some that we should be enforcing these, kind of the other side of it, So
that pressure wouldn't have happened if they weren't local, right?
Right.
If they weren't locally controlled.
Yeah. So learning again making sure you understand what the Constitution says and what your job as a sheriff is, and understanding that the other part of that is, yes, it's a political position, but that doesn't come first. The citizens and the Constitution comes first.